So good afternoon to all of you. I mean, it's a pleasure to be with you, although virtually. I wish I could be in Bularmeni with all of you like in previous years. Unfortunately, as you said it, the times are actually very difficult ones. And I thought you mentioned before that I was with you from Gaza. I'm not. I'm with you from Jerusalem. As you can see, I mean, I thought this background looks a little bit nicer than the wall behind me. And it's actually to connect the dots. It's a picture taken from the Greek Orthodox monastery of Little Galilee, whom I paid a visit to not that long ago. And this is the view over the Al-Aqsa Mosque complex and the Dome of the Rock, as you will easily recognize with the city of Jerusalem in the background. What is going on, and I guess this was also the idea of having me in the conference today, is give a little bit the feeling of the witness on the ground. Nobody is aiming at going to Gaza these days. On the contrary, I mean, we've just been spending hours earlier today and last night to get more of our people out of Gaza. I mean, we're still talking about evacuating what is currently a highly risky environment with a very heavy military operation going on and a displacement of population from the north to the south of Gaza, with regular bombings and destructions of houses and infrastructures, including schools and UN buildings, which of course doesn't make anyone with common sense wanting to go to Gaza. We are already fighting to get our humanitarian aid workers in a safe and ordered way, and this is far from being a satisfactory situation so far. But back to the topic, and I'm glad that you quoted Jeffrey Sachs, whom I couldn't follow this time, but I couldn't subscribe more to the fact that no peace means no sustainability. I guess it's in a time of war that we actually realize the luxury of fighting for sustainability during the time of peace. And also, I mean, probably encourage us a little bit more to take sustainability seriously when we have the leisure to do so, which means we don't have to fight other types of emergencies when it comes to it, because then we realize it's often far too late. It was interesting to hear Marina before. Obviously, the European reality is very different from the one that I am facing or that we are facing in the Middle East, and especially in the Palestinian territories, where half of the population is what you would consider belonging to the younger part of the population. And this is especially true in Gaza. And we unfortunately also see it in the casualties of the ongoing military operation, which half of the civilians that have been killed are actually children. So this to be said on the day of indeed the UN Day for the Rights of the Child makes even more sense. But let me get back to the idea of Palestine, conflict zones, and the idea of sustainability. Obviously, the Palestinian territories are currently under world scrutiny and the center of world's attention, not exactly because of sustainability, but whenever we look into what's next, I mean, it's obvious that sustainability is part of the scenario. It's part of the quest for peace through global cooperation, but I would say it didn't start from now. When I took the position I'm actually in now as representative of the European Union to the Palestinian territories, the first public event that I actually, which was part of my job, was a public event to launch the EU support together with a number of member states to the Palestinian green economy empowerment. So basically boosting the Green Deal agenda of the European Union, also streamlining it into our cooperation mechanisms and cooperation aid. And this was a big event that we held in the West Bank, and it was basically showing the commitment of even poorer countries and countries that struggle much more with all the parameters that have been mentioned here this morning to basically catch up with greening their own economy. And if what happened on the 7th of October hadn't happened, we would have had on the 26th of October the first EU Palestinian Business Forum in the West Bank, which would have attracted a certain number of European businesses, a lot of Palestinian businesses, investors, politicians, in order to basically set up a very robust economic empowerment for territories which have still struggling with a lot of other issues. So this, of course, obviously didn't happen, but that's just to mention that even in countries like Palestine, the EU cooperation is centered around sustainability, and it actually was very much so in Palestine over the last 30 years in the framework of the Oslo agreements. It was focused. I mean, we used to focus, and we will continue doing so after this war, on institution building, on government structures that had to be set up, that had to be viable, whether this was through direct budgetary aid or other means. And this is, of course, the underlying condition of a sustainable state apparatus and a state structure. But we would also complement this with a whole area of programs in dealing with sustainable energy, resources, water, agriculture. There was even a program for Gaza, which was called Gas for Gaza, that we were doing together with Israel and Qatar. Agriculture, economic empowerment of all sorts. There's been a big project of water desalination in Gaza as well. Obviously, those projects have been put to a halt given the current situation, less in the West Bank where they continue, but nevertheless, this is where our focus was lying, as we would do elsewhere in the world. And not to forget, obviously, and this is what I mentioned before, given the structure of the population and the age structure, a lot of focus put on youth and education, up to what the EU aid was, 300 million a year for the West Bank and Gaza together. Now, the crisis that we're facing today, which is, of course, to be seen in the context of repetitive crises, this is the fourth Gaza war in 20 years, basically. But it's what happened on the 7th of October is obviously unprecedented. It's been said, and I mean, this is not the topic of the discussion today, but it just showed that the cycle of violence basically had no end. And it was condemned, and rightly so, what happened on the 7th of October. But I would just want to quote the American Secretary of State after his first tour to the region a few days after the events, where he basically said, the Palestinian issue cannot be ignored any longer, and it cannot remain unsolved. So what does that mean? That means that for the day after, we will obviously have to look, and this is what we're doing now. First is humanitarian aid access, but then we will very quickly get into reconstruction. The UN is stating that half of the buildings in Gaza City have been either destroyed or damaged. So you can imagine the massive needs that we will be facing. This adds up, of course, to a population, 2.2 million, that was living on a very exiguous territory where poverty was actually in very high rates, and with a lack of democracy, which has to come back, because what is interesting in this nexus is that you link, of course, demography, democracy, poverty, and inequalities. And this is all present there as ingredients. So there's even more of a need for sustainable governance structures, which at some point, and this is the debate that is going on also with the Palestinian Authority, will have to come up with democratic elections once the transition period is over. That means that the Western world, the European Union, the United States of America, but also together with the Arab states, jointly have to support such a sustainable solution for and with the Palestinian people. This is, of course, not limited to the Eastern Mediterranean, because we see that the impact that such crises do have also has repercussions in our own countries, in our societies, on our streets. So in terms of political sustainability, there's a very interesting concept out there. The Palestinian leadership, the Palestinian Authority, of course, has its own weaknesses and its impediments given to the situation. But they're not giving in. They have been participating quite actively in recent years in the climate the World Climate Conferences. They were very interested and have engaged with the European Union on the Global Gateway, for instance. So there is an appetite to be part of that world that is promoting sustainability. Obviously, the challenging context makes it all difficult, but the political will is there at all levels, whether this is at government level, at local government level in cities and provinces, but also in the minds and in the awareness of the citizens. So we do have to encourage it. There is a responsibility of Europe and of the developed Western world to do so, and we have to stick to that roadmap of sustainable development in our partnership today with those countries and in our partnership in the future.